Thanksgiving is supposed to be about family, right? The warmth, the food, the laughs. But for me, it's always been a masterclass in passive aggression and favoritism served with cranberry sauce. My name's Wesley. I'm 28, live in a quiet little suburb outside of Denver, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to maintain a peaceful distance from my family. Not total estrangement, just enough space to breathe. But every Thanksgiving, like clockwork, I get pulled back into the circus. Let me give you a quick picture of the cast. My mom, Deborah, is the kind of woman who treats perception like religion. If the neighbors think she's a perfect mother, then in her mind, she is. Behind closed doors? That's another story. My dad, Mark, is a good man, but he's absent emotionally. Always has been. The kind of guy who lets the loudest voice in the room win just so he can go back to watching football in peace. And then there's my older sister, Emily, 31, gorgeous, charismatic, high-achieving, and completely rotten beneath the surface. To the world, she's the golden child. Ivy League, fancy law firm job, married to some Wall Street dude named Kyle. But to me, she's a smug manipulator who learned long ago that playing the victim or the hero, whichever suited the moment, could bend the world around her. I've never really stood a chance in their eyes. I was the quiet one, the good kid, the one who didn't need help. That's what Mom always said. Wesley's so independent. He's doing just fine. Translation: I didn't make enough noise to get attention. Never mind that I worked 2 jobs in college, took out loans she promised to help with, and taught myself how to fix my own car when the engine blew. I didn't complain, so I didn't matter. This year, I almost didn't go to Thanksgiving. Last year had been bad. Emily got toasted on Pinot Noir and made a speech about how hard it was to be the pillar of the family, while side-eyeing me the whole time. Mom cried. Dad changed the channel. I left early, and no one followed up. But this year, my girlfriend insisted. Just for a couple hours, she said. You'll feel better knowing you showed up. She meant well. I agreed. That was mistake number 1. The house looked exactly the same when I pulled into the driveway. Pristine lawn, tasteful decorations, the porch light glowing warmly like something out of a brochure. But my stomach turned the moment I walked in. Emily greeted me with a loud "Wes," like I was a long-lost cousin, not the guy she once told to be realistic when I said I was starting a business. She air-kissed me and made a show of introducing me to her new puppy, a golden retriever named Bentley. He's my baby, she said, cradling him in her arms like a toddler. Kyle got him for me after my miscarriage scare. Just like that, I was behind on the sympathy scoreboard, and dinner hadn't even started. Mom came bustling in from the kitchen, apron on, cheeks flushed from wine and oven heat. Wesley, oh, honey, you're thinner than last year. Are you eating enough? Not how are you? Not I missed you. Just commentary on my body like I was a loaf of bread she'd left in the oven too long. I smiled politely. Nice to see you too, Mom. Dad gave me a firm handshake. Not a hug. Never a hug. Hey, kid, he said, eyes already flicking back to the TV behind me. That was his version of affection. I used to resent it, but by now it just rolled off me like everything else. Dinner was served around 6. The table was a spread of Pinterest-perfect dishes: glazed ham, roasted turkey, cranberry orange relish, stuffing with pecans. Emily took charge of the seating arrangements, of course. Wes, you can sit there, she said, pointing to the chair next to the trash can. Bentley gets anxious if he's not next to Kyle, so we need him here. I stared at her. She smiled sweetly. You don't mind, right? I minded. But I sat. I always sat. I told myself I was here for the food, for the obligation, for the principle of showing up. I didn't speak much. Just listened. Emily dominated the table with stories about her promotion, her wine club, her therapist. Mom laughed like everything Emily said was stand-up comedy. Dad nodded periodically. No one asked about my job, my life, my girlfriend. I could have told them I'd won the lottery or joined a cult, and I doubt it would have registered. About halfway through the meal, Mom clinked her glass with a butter knife. Everyone, she said, half standing. I just want to say how thankful I am for my family. For Mark, who keeps us all grounded. For Emily, our shining star, who's overcome so much this year and continues to inspire us. She beamed at her. You're going to be the one to inherit this home someday, sweetheart. You've earned it. The table nodded. Emily smirked. Kyle rubbed her back. I sat frozen, fork halfway to my mouth. Did she just say that out loud? In front of me? No pretense, no attempt at subtlety. Just straight up told everyone that Emily was getting the house. The house I helped paint. The house I'd mowed lawns for every summer. The house I spent my teenage years repairing when Dad was too tired or drunk to deal with it. I felt something hot rise in my chest. My hands shook. I looked at Dad. Nothing. Just a blank stare. Like he hadn't even heard. Emily caught my eye and gave a small shrug, like, "What did you expect?" I set my fork down. Carefully. Slowly. Took a sip of water to steady my voice. Then I looked straight at my mom and said, "Wonder if Dad would still toast you if he knew about John from 10 years ago." The silence was instant. The kind that hums in your ears. Mom's smile froze, then cracked. Emily's fork clattered to her plate. Dad slowly turned his head to me, his face blank, but his eyes suddenly very, very awake. Bentley barked. And that was when everything changed. The silence after I dropped that line, "Wonder if Dad would still toast you if he knew about John from 10 years ago," wasn't just awkward. It was surgical. Like I had taken a scalpel and sliced open the glossy, picture-perfect facade of our family, right in front of the turkey and mashed potatoes. Mom's face twitched first. Just a blink, just a flinch, but I caught it. Her lips parted like she wanted to laugh it off, but there was no laugh coming. Emily stared at me like I'd just stood on the table and stripped naked. Kyle glanced between us, clearly unsure if this was some inside joke or a live domestic bomb going off. Dad slowly, carefully, placed his wine glass down. His voice was calm. "Wesley, what did you just say?" I didn't blink. "You heard me." Mom finally spoke. That was completely uncalled for. Her voice shook, not with indignation, but with something else. Fear? Guilt? "This is Thanksgiving. What is wrong with you?" I leaned back in my chair, just wondering if family secrets count when we're giving thanks. No one said anything for a few seconds. Then Emily scoffed and rolled her eyes. "God, Wes, you're still holding on to whatever fantasy you had about Mom cheating? That was a rumor you made up when you were like 17 because she grounded you." I turned my eyes on her. Funny, I don't remember making up the part where I walked into her office and saw her kissing someone who wasn't Dad. The room reeled. Mom looked like she might throw up. Dad was stone still. Bentley whined under the table. I was getting ready for homecoming. I went on, calmly, like I was describing a weather report. My tie was messed up. I went to ask Mom for help. She was in her office. The door was cracked. And there was this guy, dark hair, leather jacket, about Dad's height, but definitely not Dad, leaning in and kissing her. She didn't see me. I backed out. Never said anything. "You're lying," Mom said quietly. "You misunderstood. I was 17, not 7. I folded my arms. "But hey, I guess now that Emily's getting the house, secrets can come out, right?" Dad stood up without a word and left the table. No plate, no glass, just left. We all sat there for a moment, frozen in the heat of what had just happened. Then Mom stood too. "Dinner's over." I stayed seated and watched her leave. That moment, that precise second, was when I realized I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But strangely, I didn't feel regret. I felt light, like I had finally stopped carrying something that had been crushing me for years. You'd think the fallout would have started immediately, but that's not how my family operates. They don't explode. They unravel. The next day, no one called me. No angry text, no apology, nothing. Just silence. That night, I got a text from my dad. It was short. Was it true? About John. I stared at my screen for a long time before typing back. "Yeah. Sorry." He didn't reply. I didn't expect Emily to reach out, but she did. 2 days later, a snippy little message popped up. "Nice performance at dinner. Hope it was worth nuking the family for a decade-old fantasy." I didn't respond. Instead, I started thinking. Not about the past, about the present. About what this family had taken from me and what it still planned to take. Because here's the thing. That house. The one Mom said Emily would inherit? I had helped build parts of it, literally. I was 16 when we added the sunroom. Dad threw his back out, and I spent 2 weeks on ladders with a nail gun, doing framing work in 90-degree heat. I painted those walls. I mowed that lawn every weekend for 3 years. I cleaned up when Dad got too drunk. I'd covered for Emily when she wrecked Mom's car and begged me not to tell. I'd listened to Mom cry in the laundry room more times than I could count. I was a part of that house, and they were just going to toss it to Emily like I never existed? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I pulled into the driveway again. The porch light was off this time. The air was colder, the grass already crusted with early frost. I knocked once, then again. Finally, Mom opened the door, her face tired and unmade. "Wesley." Her voice was hoarse. "What do you want?" "We need to talk." She hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked in. The living room looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how that happens. Everything shrinks when the illusions go. We sat. She didn't offer me coffee or tea. She didn't speak first. So I did. "I know you're giving the house to Emily." Her eyes flashed. "That's not your business." "It is," I said. "Because I helped build this place. Because I lived here. Because I watched you protect her over and over while I got pushed into the shadows. And because I know why you're doing it. Not because she deserves it, but because you think she's the one who'll keep your image alive." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You're twisting everything." I leaned in. "Am I? Or are you just mad I finally said what everyone's been thinking?" She didn't answer. "You never forgave me," I said. "Not for seeing you with him. That's when everything changed, right? That's when you started pulling away. That's why you told Dad I was cold and difficult. You started rewriting me the moment I saw something you wanted to pretend didn't happen." Her face crumbled a little. "It wasn't what you thought. It was exactly what I thought. And it ruined me." She flinched. "I kept your secret. For years. Do you even know what that did to me? Watching Dad love you. Knowing he didn't know? Watching you and Emily bond over shopping and wine while I sat in my room wondering if I was even wanted." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I didn't stop. And now you're rewarding her with everything. The house, your approval, your legacy. All because she didn't catch you lying." She looked away. That's when I realized she wasn't just ashamed. She was afraid. Not of me, but of the truth finally having weight. "I'm not here to ask for the house," I said. "I don't even want it. But I am done pretending. I'm done playing the obedient second-string son. And if you think you can bury me quietly again, you're wrong." That night, I went home and called a lawyer. See, what my mom didn't know, or maybe forgot, was that when I was 19, Dad and I refinanced the house together. I had co-signed the paperwork when his credit was too low. They said it was temporary. They said they'd fix it later. But they never did. And that meant my name was still on the deed. Not Emily's. Mine. I pulled up the records to be sure. And when I saw it in black and white, Wesley Hartman, co-owner, something inside me clicked. They thought I was quiet. They thought I was weak. They forgot quiet doesn't mean powerless. And I wasn't done yet. I didn't sleep much that night. I just kept staring at the property deed with my name on it, flicking between disbelief and a strange, simmering satisfaction. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. But that feeling didn't last long. Because the truth is, knowing you have leverage is one thing. Using it is another. Especially when it's against your own family. The fallout came fast. 3 days after my surprise visit, Dad called me. Not text. Not email. A real call. That alone was enough to make me pause before picking up. "Wesley," he said, his voice flat. "Can you come by?" That was it. No explanation. No emotion. Just a summons. Like I was a contractor being called to fix a leak. I agreed. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of hope. When I got there, the house felt colder, not just because of the December air seeping through the windows, but because something in the walls had changed. The warmth, fake as it always was, had vanished. Dad was in the living room. Alone. TV off. No drink in his hand. No sports game to hide behind. "I talked to your mother," he said. I stayed standing. "She admitted it," he added after a moment. "About the guy? John?" I nodded once. "Okay." She said it was brief. That it was a mistake. I didn't say anything. "She also said you've been looking into the house deed. That you're trying to stir things up." There it was. "She's giving the house to Emily," I said. "Even after everything." Dad looked at me for a long time. "You want the house?" "No," I said. "I want her to admit what she's done. I want her to stop pretending. I want her to treat me like her son, not a witness to her mistakes." Dad's eyes softened. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe, he'd finally see me. Not the problem child. Not the cold one. Me. But then he said, "Sometimes, Wesley, it's better to let things be." That was the last straw. I felt something inside me, something old and cracked and exhausted, finally snap. "Let things be." I laughed. "You mean lie? Keep covering? Keep pretending like Emily deserves everything and I should be grateful for leftovers?" "You've always been independent," he said. You never needed anything. No, I snapped. I just learned not to ask. There's a difference. He didn't argue, just looked away. And I walked out. That was the last time I saw my dad in person. What came next was the quiet part, the low point, the free fall. I thought standing up for myself would feel like a win. I thought uncovering the truth would free me. But all it did was isolate me. Mom stopped returning texts. Emily blocked me on everything. Even my aunt, who used to send me birthday cards, sent me a polite message asking me to not escalate things further. Like I was the threat. Like I had set the house on fire, not just pointed at the smoke. Christmas came and went without an invitation. My girlfriend's family welcomed me with open arms, and I smiled through it. But something ached in my chest the entire time. I didn't miss the people. I missed the version of them I used to believe in. The version I used to fight for. Work got harder. I run a small design firm. Nothing flashy, mostly branding for local businesses, some online contracts here and there. But when you're emotionally gutted, it shows. I missed deadlines. Lost a client. Spent too many days just staring at blank screens. And worst of all, I started believing maybe they were right about me. Maybe I was too cold, too bitter. Maybe I had blown everything up for nothing. I stopped checking the deed. Stopped looking at texts. I stopped everything. Until one night in January, I found myself driving. Just driving. No destination. Snow coming down hard. I ended up parked outside a diner I used to go to with my dad as a kid. They had this jukebox that always played old Springsteen songs, and booths with cracked red vinyl. I went in, ordered coffee, sat alone, and across from me, a table away, was Mrs. Kellen, my high school English teacher. She looked the same, just a little grayer. She squinted at me. "Wesley Hartman," she said. I blinked. Yeah, hi." She beamed. "My goodness. I haven't seen you since, gosh, what, 10 years? More, I think. You were always so quiet. But smart." She paused. "I still remember your essay about the Great Gatsby. You were the only one who didn't romanticize him. You said he was a fool chasing a ghost." I smiled faintly. "Sounds about right." She tilted her head. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" And I don't know what came over me. Maybe the coffee, maybe the warmth of her voice, but I told her everything. Not in detail, just the outline. Family drama, inheritance, secrets, being the quiet one. She listened, really listened. And when I finished, she said something that stuck with me. "You know, I always thought you were the strongest one in the room. Not loud, not flashy, but you saw everything. That's a hard way to grow up." I stared at her. "And just because they didn't see your worth," she added, "doesn't mean it wasn't there." I drove home with tears in my eyes. Not because I was sad, because for the first time, someone had seen me. Not as a pawn, not as a nuisance, not as background noise. Me. That night, I opened my laptop. I stared at the deed again, and I made a decision. I wouldn't take the house. I wouldn't sue. I wouldn't burn it all down. But I would rebuild. On my terms. The next few months were quiet. I poured myself into my work. Rebranded my company. Reached out to old clients. Hired a part-time assistant. Things started clicking. I landed a contract with a regional coffee chain that wanted to refresh all their branding. It was the biggest job I'd ever had. Paid well, too. I also started seeing a therapist. For the first time in my life. And it felt good. Like clearing out a storage unit I didn't even realize was packed to the ceiling. We talked about my mom, my sister, my need for quiet, my craving for fairness. And she said something that shifted everything for me. "Wesley, you grew up thinking love was transactional, that you had to earn it, prove it, match it. But that's not love. That's control." That hit me like a freight train. So I stopped trying to prove anything to anyone. I stopped checking for texts that would never come. I stopped imagining some future where Mom apologized or Emily admitted she was wrong. I let those fantasies die. And in their place, I planted something new. My girlfriend, bless her, stayed by my side through it all. She didn't push. She didn't demand. She just listened, laughed with me, cooked when I forgot to eat, and reminded me that not all families require DNA. By spring, my firm had doubled its revenue. I'd been featured in a local magazine. And I bought a small cabin in the mountains. Nothing big, just enough space to breathe. I paid for it in cash. My name. My home. Mine. I still hadn't spoken to my mom. But then, one morning in April, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a formal letter, the kind you get from a lawyer. Except this one wasn't from mine. It was from hers. And it said, very clearly, that I was being removed from the house deed. They'd found a loophole, apparently. Claimed the original cosign was invalid due to some technicality. The details didn't matter. What mattered was the message: we don't want you to have a stake. We never did. They were trying to erase me. Again. But this time, they picked the wrong guy. That letter sat on my kitchen table for 2 days before I touched it again. It was stiff, formal, and cold. The exact tone you'd expect when someone's trying to quietly scrub you out of the family narrative. The wording was just polite enough to avoid suspicion in court, but the message was sharp if you read between the lines. You're not one of us. You never were. It was a punch to the gut. Not because I wanted the house. I didn't. I had already built something better on my own. But because they had gone out of their way, spent time, money, and probably some late-night scheming sessions just to erase me. Like I was a stain on their pristine reputation. They had to know I'd see it. That I'd read it. That I'd feel it. And that's when something inside me flipped again, not like before, when I snapped and dropped the John bomb at Thanksgiving. That had been raw, emotional, almost reckless. This was colder, cleaner, calculated. They wanted war. I'd give it to them. But I'd do it my way. First thing I did was meet with my own lawyer, Mara. She'd helped me incorporate my business 2 years earlier and had always been sharp, the kind of person who smiles like she already knows what you're about to say. I handed her the letter. She read it once, then again, then whistled. Wow, they really went for it. Can they do that? I asked. She leaned back. Technically, maybe. Depends on how the refinance paperwork was filed and if your name was ever officially added to the title or just co-signed on the mortgage. We'd have to pull the records. I want to pull everything. She grinned. You're serious. Very. Good. Because this letter wasn't just a legal move. It was personal. She filed the request for the full property history that afternoon. And when it came back a week later, she called me with a tone in her voice I hadn't heard before, like she'd found something juicy. Wesley, she said, they made a mistake. Turns out, when my name was added during the refinancing, they didn't just put me on the loan. They filed an amendment to the deed with the county clerk's office, listing me as a co-owner with survivorship rights. Mara explained what that meant. If your parents had passed without changing the deed, the property would have defaulted to you, regardless of the will. It's rare. Most people don't do it that way unless they really trust the co-signer. I almost laughed. My dad probably didn't even read what he was signing. Exactly. And because of that, removing you now would require your signature, which, unless you've developed amnesia, you're not giving them. I sat back in my chair. So this letter is bluffing. Not just bluffing, she said. It's based on ignorance. They probably had a lawyer who didn't dig deep enough. Or maybe they were hoping you didn't know better. They picked the wrong guy. That's what I told myself when I saw your name in all caps on the deed. We both laughed. And that's when the first domino fell. I didn't respond to the letter. Didn't call. Didn't send an email. Instead, I filed a formal affidavit of ownership with the county, something Mara recommended to reinforce my stake in the property. It wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't aggressive. But it was a loud, clear signal. I know what you're doing. And I'm not moving. Then, I went quiet. Because silence makes people nervous. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of them not hearing from me. 3 weeks of that affidavit sitting in public records. 3 weeks of Mom probably pacing in her kitchen, trying to figure out why her little chess move didn't work. Then she called. I didn't answer. She tried again the next day. Left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, like she was squeezing words through her teeth. Wesley, I'd really like to talk. Just call me when you can. I let it sit. Another week passed. Then Emily called. That one I did answer. Because I wanted to hear it from her mouth. Wesley, she said sharply, what the hell are you doing? I smiled. Afternoon, Em. Been a while. Cut the crap. You filed some public notice claiming the house. Are you trying to cause problems on purpose? Just reaffirming my legal position, I said, calm as can be. Nothing personal. She scoffed. It's always personal with you. You're bitter, and now you're trying to drag us down with you. You mean like when Mom tried to remove my name without telling me? That's different. How? Silence. Then, you're not going to win. You're not getting the house. I told you, I said. I don't want the house. Then what do you want? I let the pause stretch. Then I said, you'll find out. And I hung up. That night, I started planning. Not out of revenge. Not exactly. This wasn't about making them hurt. Not the way they'd hurt me. It was about truth. about letting the cracks in their little porcelain empire finally show. But I needed help. So I made a list, not of enemies, of witnesses, old neighbors, contractors, family friends, people who'd been around when the house was being built, people who remembered seeing me sweat in the backyard, fixing gutters, or hauling mulch, people who could confirm I wasn't some ghost floating around the edges of this family. I also pulled records, photos, emails, bank transfers from when I paid for parts of the renovation, a receipt from the time I bought a new water heater out of my own pocket because Mom said they were tight on cash. Each one was a nail, not for a coffin, for a case. Then I created a digital folder, organized, labeled, time-stamped. Mara helped me craft a statement of contributions, not just financial, but labor, time, maintenance, emotional support. And when it was done, I had a 37-page packet that detailed my stake in that home better than any will ever could. But I wasn't done, because the real setup, the real twist, didn't involve courts. It involved Dad. See, what they didn't know was that I'd been speaking to him again. It started with a text, short, simple. I was wrong. Can we talk? I didn't trust it at first. I still don't know if I fully do. But we met. Neutral ground. A diner again, oddly enough. Same cracked booths, different server. He looked older. Not just in the face, in the posture. Like the weight of 40 years of choices had finally settled into his spine. I should have stood up for you, he said, before the coffee even hit the table. I didn't answer. I knew about John. Not right away, but I figured it out. I didn't want to break things. Didn't want to lose everything I'd built. And what did you build? I asked. A museum of denial? He smiled weakly. Pretty much. We talked for a long time. Not just about the house. About everything. The missed birthdays. The passive silence. The nights I cried myself to sleep, and he just turned up the volume on the TV. He didn't defend himself. He owned it. And for the first time in my life, I saw a man, not just a shell. So I made a move. I need something from you, I said. He blinked. Okay. I want you to write a letter. Not for court. For Emily. For Mom. I wanted to say, in plain terms, that I contributed. That you brought me on to help. That I earned my name on that deed. He looked at me for a long moment. Then nodded. I can do that. He sent it to me a week later. Signed. Dated. Thoughtful. Mara said it was a nuclear-level character witness statement. And that's when I knew the setup was complete. I had the documents. I had the witnesses. I had the receipts. I had the truth. But most importantly, I had patience. Because I wasn't going to strike first. I was going to wait until they did. And when they did, when they filed whatever motion or launched whatever public tantrum they were cooking up, I'd be ready. With everything. It happened, fittingly, the day after Mother's Day. I was sipping coffee on my cabin porch, morning fog still curling off the trees, when Mara called. I expected an update on a minor paperwork detail we'd filed, maybe a clarification request from the county clerk. But the first thing she said was, well, they finally made their move. I sat forward. What happened? They filed a civil petition to claim sole ownership of the property, cited undue influence, lack of contribution on your part, and, she actually snorted, emotional estrangement. I blinked. They're trying to say I don't count because we're not close? She read the phrasing aloud. The respondent, Wesley Hartman, has not participated in the family estate materially or emotionally, and therefore holds no rightful claim to its possession or future transfer. I let out a low laugh. They really went there. Oh, they went there, she said. And they filed it publicly. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Should we respond? I asked. Mara chuckled. Wes, we're not just going to respond. We're going to end this. Step 1 was filing our own countersuit, not to claim the house, but to block their petition entirely and to formally enforce the affidavit of ownership I'd filed months earlier. We submitted the deed, the refinance documents, the proof of financial contributions, and most importantly, my dad's letter. He had written it by hand. It was only 1 page long, but it was meticulous. It included dates, events, and admissions, how he'd asked me to co-sign, how I'd helped build the sunroom, how I'd paid for the water heater, how he'd failed to back me publicly despite knowing I'd earned my place. He even added this. My son was never treated fairly. Not by me, and not by my wife. But the truth is, he has always had more integrity than the rest of us combined. The court filings became public record within a week. I didn't need to leak them. The internet took care of the rest. Because someone, maybe a paralegal, maybe a nosy intern, posted a screenshot of my father's letter on a local legal forum. It didn't have names at first, but the story had all the makings of a viral drama. Forgotten son fights back against family's attempt to steal home he helped build. Rich sister. Secret affair. Old secrets. Legal plot twist. Then a local real estate blog caught wind of it and ran a piece with the headline, Golden Girl or Grifter. Family property dispute reveals ugly truth behind suburban dynasty. And right there, in the second paragraph, was a sentence that made me exhale through my nose. Sources confirmed that Wesley Hartman, co-owner of the property, has filed to block the unilateral seizure of a home he materially contributed to since the age of 16. My name was out. So was Emily's. So was my mother's. And the internet, being the internet, ate it up. 2 days later, my inbox lit up with a new email. Subject, settlement proposal. From Deborah Hartman. CC. Emily Hartman, Law Office of Robert H. Keller. I didn't even open it. I forwarded it straight to Mara. She called me an hour later. They're panicking. They're offering to rescind their petition and reinstate your name. And they want a non-disclosure agreement. I laughed. Loudly. Of course they do. They'll keep your name on the deed. They'll drop all claims. You just have to sign the NDA and publicly agree to no further litigation. And in exchange, they want silence. No interviews. No op-eds. No TikToks. I thought about it for a long minute. Then I said, no deal. Mara hesitated. You sure? I didn't do all this to go quiet now. She smiled through the phone. Knew you'd say that. That weekend, I did the one thing they never thought I'd do. I told my story. Not to the press. Not to a gossip blog. I posted it myself, anonymously at first, on a subreddit for family legal horror stories. I gave them every detail. The favoritism, the inheritance speech at Thanksgiving, the affair, the fake letter trying to erase me, the cold silence afterward, the legal battle. And people listened. The post hit the front page within 12 hours. Thousands of comments poured in. Most were furious on my behalf. Some shared their own stories of being the forgotten sibling. Others offered support. A few asked for updates. Then a journalist reached out. Not a tabloid one. A well-known columnist who writes about family, legacy, and healing. I agreed to speak. Off the record. She ended up writing a powerful piece. No names, no specifics. Just a quiet exploration of what happens when the black sheep stops playing dead. That piece went viral, too. And though my name was never mentioned, Emily and my mother knew. Because by then, the calls had started. Old family friends began reaching out. Some angry, some stunned. A few former neighbors even emailed me. One woman I hadn't spoken to in 15 years wrote, I always wondered why you disappeared after high school. I remember you fixing our fence when your dad didn't show up. I'm so sorry, Wesley. The world was seeing them. Not the curated, wine and smiles version they paraded at neighborhood parties. The real version. The fallout was swift. Emily's firm issued a statement distancing themselves from the private family matter. She went on indefinite leave. Her Instagram, once a highlight reel of brunches and luxury vacations, went dark. Mom stayed quiet. I heard from Mara that she switched lawyers. Dad and I kept talking. He didn't try to defend them anymore. He didn't even ask for forgiveness. He just kept showing up. Sometimes with stories from his youth, sometimes with questions about my work, sometimes just with silence. But it was real. That was enough. As for the house, I still don't want it. But I own half of it, legally. And when they finally offered a buyout, this time without an NDA, I accepted. The final settlement came through just before summer. 6 figures. Direct deposit. I used a fraction of it to expand my business. Hired 2 full-time designers. Rented an office in Denver. The rest I invested, in my cabin, in a small art foundation, in myself. I didn't need revenge that left them bankrupt. I just needed to be seen. I needed the truth to land like a hammer, not a whisper. And it did. Not because I yelled. Because I waited. Because I planned. Because I stopped asking for space at a table I helped build, and claimed it. I still think about that Thanksgiving sometimes. That moment when Mom raised her glass, called Emily the Golden Girl, and handed her the world like a gift-wrapped crown. Back then, it felt like the end of something. Now, I see it for what it was. The beginning. The last time they underestimated me. And the moment they forgot the most dangerous kind of man. is the one they trained to stay silent, but taught to never forget.